And we have Matt Zorn from Desert Sky Ranch with us today. And Matt, we'll start out with the beef markets and why have they been so stubborn? And I know you've done the research here. And a few years ago, we went through a similar happening, 2012 to 2015, right?
Correct. Yes. Hi, Brandon. How you doing?
Doing great.
The period of time you're referring to is roughly in that 2011 to 2016, right in that time frame. And the period of time we're talking about right now starts roughly in 2021 and goes into 22, and that's the beginning of it. And what happens is very similar, both situations of what happened. Today, in 2021, you have a situation where severe drought really starts to affect the pasture conditions in the U.S. And the producers that are in this area, when the pasture conditions go down like that, they don't have a lot of options for feeding cattle. And they don't have a lot of options other than to sell off what they have and liquidate their herds completely. And when they do that, that means of reproduction or replacement cattle going forward to help supply that supply line, it's gone. And you take a situation like that and you multiply that by hundreds or if not thousands of different ranches and producers around the country, and what you see is a wave starting that there's going to be a challenge going forward to keep that supply line stocked correctly.
It takes a few years to get that back up, right?
Yeah, it doesn't happen. It takes a couple of years to get into the problem, and it takes years to get out of the problem. So as that kind of wave keeps moving, we get into 2022, 2023, where we are now. It's kind of the second phase of it. You're looking at a supply line where more stock is being pulled out of it than is being put back into it. And cattle that would typically be held back for what they call replacement or reproduction is going into that supply line. And at the same time this is happening, there's very strong demand for beef products in the U.S. as well as exports. The beef market for the last several years has been extremely strong. So what happens is the supply line is tightening, and then cattle prices start to rise. And this starts in 2022, and it goes over into 2023, and it's still a problem to this day. 2015 was the last time we hit all-time high prices. And currently today, prices, we're blown well past that. We're in kind of uncharted territory. We're at the highest prices we've had in the U.S. ever. And as these cattle prices rise, the producers that maybe weren't affected by the drought and didn't liquidate their herd, they see an opportunity here to take advantage of those higher prices, and it makes sense. And not knowing how long those prices will stay that way, they start to not only sell what they would typically sell into the supply line, but they start selling, replacement cattle and reproduction cattle into that same supply line. And the ability to reproduce further diminishes, keeping that supply line stocked. So where we end up and where we are today is you have a herd size in the U.S. that's down to multi-decade lows. The USDA has our herd size currently scored roughly to where it was in 1962, if you can believe that.
Wow.
And in a situation where we are right now, strong demand but tightening supplies. And the concern is there's always another phase to this, the next phase, and this is what we'll probably see as we go into 24 or 25, I hope not 26, pasture conditions will start to improve again. And the example I gave with that first producer that liquidated his herd, he'll see pasture conditions improving, and they'll go ahead and they'll start to get back into it to try to rebuild that herd that's been culled down. Now, the way they do that is there's two ways. One, you stop selling the cows into the system, which are the known producers, and then you start to hold back the heifers, which are the younger females, for future reproductions. And when you do that, unfortunately, it leads to even tighter supplies, and it kind of compounds the problem. It becomes this loop that feeds into each other. And like you had mentioned just a minute ago, it typically takes 2 to 3 years to get these herd sizes rebuilt. And that's unfortunately what we can kind of anticipate going forward into maybe 25, I hope not too much further. But the other question also becomes, Brandon, is when these prices do start to come back down, when this market does hopefully break and returns down, with the inflation we've been experiencing, will we see the prices we saw before, or will we now be at maybe a new high?
Yeah, so how do you see it ending?
Well, the way it ended in 2015 was kind of interesting. It was two components to it. On the producer rancher side, to make up for the lack of cattle that were available, they started to feed heavy. A lot of people say they overfed. So the theory was, let's make bigger cattle. And when you do that, in the cattle market, the heavier the animal, the heavier the carcass, there's a discount for that when you take it to the producer. So as they brought these heavier carcasses into the production facilities, the processors, the price started to come down. It kind of nibbled down a little bit, and the price started to roll over. There's also a second aspect to this, which was export demand. So when you have a strong dollar, which we did at the time, and you had high cattle prices, it makes exports difficult. And at the same time, some of these destination spots that we were exporting to, their economies were getting a little weak in 2015. So with the demand in exports going down and the prices starting to roll over, the whole thing kind of snowballed. And
I got you.
Between 2015 and 16, prices, they dropped as much as 55% and got more to a historical average.
Yeah, and Matt, there are some things customers can do, and that's take advantage of what you guys do at DSR Cattle.
Yeah, we're a local producer. You can work with us. We raise cattle to order for people that want it naturally raised without the use of any kind of drugs or hormones. And when you do that, you're getting better pricing. You're dealing directly, and you're not dealing with the ups and downs with it. If anyone's interested, if they want to check out our program, they can go to dsrcattle.com, or they can call us at 505-864-3900.
All right. Thank you, Matt. This is News Radio KKOB.